In a past video, I showed you this map and this road. This road leads to a village that is 2,020 meters above sea level, and from there you can hike up the mountains that rise another, I think, 1,000 meters. I've explored and shot that road a couple times already, as I've shared with you. However, I've never actually gone to that village to check out the hikes there. However, a couple weeks ago, I decided to look up some hikes from that village to go there before the hiking season ends to shoot a roll of slide film. And in today's video, I'm showing you how that went.
I don't wanna waste it on anybody. Take it with anybody but you.
So this story kind of begins with me moving to Innsbruck. Something I was really looking forward to is to live close to the mountains again, which I was strongly missing in Vienna. And so the last couple of months I've been trying to learn about the different areas around Innsbruck and possible adventures that could await me. One place that you saw clearly struck me is that road that leads to that high ski village I told you about. I just randomly found that one day while hanging out on Google Maps, as I often do, looking for some spots that could be interesting to shoot in. Ever since finding that road, I've been so in awe of that area, but I've never driven all the way through the last two tunnels, which then lead to the village, which by the way is called Kütai. But a couple weeks ago I was thinking about where I might want to go to shoot next, and remembered that this village is still on my list of unexplored places, and so a plan was made. I looked up some hikes and found out that there is a route that passes 3 mountain lakes, which sounded epic, so I chose to do that. Next, I had to choose what exactly I was going to bring in terms of photographic equipment. I looked through my camera cupboard and my film stocks and spotted something. This is a roll of Fujifilm Velvia 100. I picked this up in Japan in a shop that sold a couple different film stocks. You must know, in Japan, Kodak is quite expensive. I mean, even more than it already is. But Fujifilm, on the other hand, is a bit cheaper, which I guess makes sense. However, I was not expecting to find Fuji Velvia 100 for about 10 euros, which is half of what I usually find it for here in Austria. So I bought the roll simply because I saw this as my chance to try out this Fuji slide film for a much cheaper price than usual. Something to note is that I'm quite inexperienced with slide film. I've shot one roll, but that one doesn't really count because it was a roll of Fuji Chrome 100 that expired 30 years ago. I really liked the photos though. With this roll of Fuji Velvia, I don't know why, but I thought Velvia plus mountains, that sounds like a great combination. And so, on the base of that rather random feeling, I chose this shoot as the one for my roll of Fujifilm Velvia 100 to shine. I packed my stuff and loaded the camera the day before, and the next morning it was time to depart.
There's a drunk in every graveyard, there's a ghost in every bar. I'm drinking in the moonlight, wondering where you are.
I really enjoyed the drive up the road again. It is so beautiful and a pleasure every time. I was so looking forward to actually drive further up than I had ever gone before. Well, that, in Austria, is the road sign for driving in here is prohibited, and it stood right in front of the tunnel. It appeared that they were working on some renovations or something inside the tunnel, and I hadn't realised that I was not going to be able to drive through there on that day. I checked on Google Maps how far away I was if I were to walk the rest, and it said 45 minutes, which is long, but I was thinking there is no way that I'm just going to turn around now, and so I was about to do that. But then I met 2 tourists from Greece who ran into the same problem as I did. They decided to take a sketchy looking off-road path that led around the tunnel to get to the village anyway. I was not going to do that because I didn't want to get into any trouble, especially with this car that I was driving, which is not mine, but my girlfriend's car, which I constantly borrow to go on shoots. However, I was chatting a little with a couple from Greece and they offered me a lift to the village so that I only had to do the long walk on my way back. And so, eventually, I arrived in Kütai.
Close your eyes, hear the voice within calling.
With my video camera on one strap and my Pentax on another, I began my hike and was already in awe of the views right from the beginning. This place is surrounded by some gorgeous looking peaks, and so it didn't take long for me to take my first shot. This is the result. First shot of the day, and I think I was off to a good start. I was very worried about the contrast and lack in dynamic range with slide film, and while this is quite contrasty, it looks great in my opinion. I love how the path leads the eye in the composition to add a sense of depth to the photo. Next, I was fond of the grass and bushes here, and I wanted to get a detail shot. This turned out alright. It doesn't really stand out, but it could work in a series as a detail shot that completes the series and adds diversity. Here is another simple landscape composition. The lighting wasn't any special sadly, so the look is a bit boring I find, but the view is still amazing and I enjoy the composition with the rocks in the foreground. So I knew my goal on this path was to pass 3 mountain lakes, and to my surprise I found the first one really quickly. I love mountain lakes like these so much. They are so beautiful and emit a sense of calmness which I tried to capture in a couple photos. This one is okay, but the lighting is a bit tough in my opinion because it's very flat and doesn't really emphasize the depth in the scene. I do like how this one turned out. The depth is conveyed here thanks to the leading lines created by the lake, so it doesn't feel as flat.
Through the arbor, in the garden.
Then I wanted to shoot one more photo, a classic shot of the reflections in the water. Here it is, and it's alright. The lighting is a bit flat again, but the reflections and the colours kind of make up for that.
And actually these benches are kind of cool.
As I was about to leave this lake and headed to the next place, I was intrigued by this scene with the benches that looked a bit odd in the alpine terrain. Here's the shot, and I like it. Again, the lighting is my main point of critique here, but nevertheless I'm fond of the photo because the benches just look kind of funny as they stand here, weirdly spread apart from each other, with the epic looking mountain behind. Then, before we continue, I want to briefly thank the lovely sponsor of today's video, which is Squarespace. Squarespace is a great all-in-one website platform that we photographers can use to make our website. I've been using Squarespace for about 3 or so years for my portfolio, and that is where I present the different projects I've worked on or am currently working on, ranging from short films to photography projects. So here you can look through my work with a little thumbnail and then click see more if you want to know the details, where I've either placed the finished work or it says something like work in progress. What's great about Squarespace in my opinion is the user interface, because someone like me who doesn't have much experience with website building can use Squarespace rather easily without needing to watch hours upon hours of tutorials. It's pretty self-explanatory. You can start off with one of their many templates and then customize those to fit your own needs and taste. Head to squarespace.com for a 14-day free trial, and then when you're ready to launch your website you can go to squarespace.com/Crawford to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Thank you so much to Squarespace for supporting me and my work here. I really appreciate it. The next section of the hike had a change in environment. I left the grassy, bushy part of the mountain and entered a more rocky terrain. At one point, I passed a bunch of rocks which just somehow intrigued me. The way they lie there, all pressed together, building this detailed texture looked fascinating to me, and so I shot this detail photo, which again, I would categorize as one of those shots that aren't a standalone photograph, but an effective addition to a series.
There we go. Lake number 2.
Then, up a couple more meters, I made it to the second lake, where I, of course, looked for some more compositions to shoot. This is one I found, but I just don't like the look of the lighting again. The composition is fine actually, but the shot just doesn't really work with the weird lighting. Next, however, I found this cool looking rock and shot this photo, which I think looks much better. It's very punchy, which isn't exactly my taste, but I guess that's what slide film looks like. I like it anyway, and think this is one of the better shots so far.
And now my shoe is wrecked. I think this is gonna be the last hike for this shoe. I hope I can still make it with that thing flapping around.
Then, from the last lake, I had a bit of a descent and came back to a more grassier part of the mountain and even found this cute stream of water, which I saw as another photo opportunity. Here's the shot. Again, very punchy looking, but pretty good actually. I love the composition with the stream that leads to the back where the eye simply meets a wall of rocks, which gives me a sense of scale and emphasizes the fact of being surrounded by these huge mountains. Here I found the next lake and a mountain hut, which unfortunately was closed, but I had brought my own lunch anyway, and so I sat here to enjoy the view and have my snack to power up for the last uphill part that was going to lead me to the highest lake. Before heading to the last lake, I of course had to shoot at least one photo of this one.
I can only hope that worked out.
The result is okay. I actually really like the composition and the lighting, however I'm either hitting the limit of the slide film's dynamic range here already, or I just should have exposed a stop or two darker.
Oh, there we go.
The path to the last lake was quite short actually. I only walked for about 5 or 10 minutes and then found this here. This lake was certainly the most epic. Personally, I think I liked the first one the most because that one felt more idyllic thanks to the greenery, but this one with the huge rocks was certainly great looking as well. Here I shot a simple wide shot of the lake with the rocks in the background, and I mean, look at this, it's such a basic photo, but the scenery doesn't really require much more. But that of course doesn't mean that I didn't still try to find some other photos. I've always been fond of the way that rocks gradually fade into the lake, and so I shot 2 detail shots to picture that, which both I think turned out really nice. I'm quite happy with these. I really like the lighting here, the way the sun adds a patch of brightness in the composition. However, sadly, I again ran into the same dynamic range problem. I'm not sure, however, whether I simply should have exposed a stop or so darker, because I also don't want to lose the shadows.
Okay, kind of have to hope that that'll do for now. Feels like I'm not even wearing a shoe now.
So, with that lake explored and shot, my main mission for the day was accomplished. However, next I of course had to find my way back down the mountain and to the car. I was going to walk down a different path to sort of make a round trip, and I knew that I was going to pass a dam with a big water reservoir. Sadly, I didn't really like this part of the hike. There was a lot of infrastructure here, not much nature anymore, and they were fixing a couple things, and so I found myself passing baggers and stuff, which was not really what I had come for. After a while, I arrived at the dam and the water reservoir. I could see some potential here, but it took me a while to find a composition worth shooting. Eventually, I found a neat spot from where I could shoot this road I came from with the sign in the composition and the neighbouring mountain in the background. The result is pretty cool, I find. I'm not sure how much I enjoy the look of the colours here. I'm afraid Fuji Velvia is not quite my taste, but I'm very happy about the composition. I just like how this turned out with the sign in the foreground kind of acting as a subject and then the incredible looking background completing the picture. This shot, I must say, I like a lot. The sunlight adds some nice depth to the scene by emphasizing the shapes and the shadows. I'm also fond of the composition with the rocky wall in the foreground, that one random rock on the path, and then the gorgeous backdrop. Also, I haven't explicitly said it yet, but wow, that watercolor is pretty crazy. So with that site explored, I decided it's time to find my way back down, and luckily I found a hiking route that led straight down so that I didn't have to just walk down the road, which would have been a bit boring. On the way, I found this spot and the lighting was just hitting the mountain in this pretty curious way so that only a part of the mountain was highlighted. I think the photograph turned out pretty cool. On my way down, I shot a couple more photos in the softer light, seeing as the sun was setting. This was again challenging the dynamic range of the film at times, but I think it held up alright. This one maybe not as much, this one really exceeds the limit. Then here I came across a stream of water that had so many fascinating little details to capture, so that I shot these two photos. Next, I found one more composition which I had high hopes for, and I think it worked out really nicely. I love how we get this view that leads down to the mountain and those houses at the back that act a bit like a goal or a destination for the eye that wanders through the photo. Okay, I guess that's the end of the day. It is completely empty here. I don't exactly feel comfortable walking on this massive road. I think I've got a good way to go to the car. I don't have some nice tourists to give me a ride anymore. So I just kept walking, and on the way I actually found a couple more photos, which in this softer post-sunset lighting turned out really good looking. I really like how this one turned out. I know it's a very basic photo, just a road going through the mountains, but I cannot deny how cool this looks, and I love the spot of light on the mountain ahead. Right, so update, I'm almost at the end of the tunnel that was closed, which is why the car is right there. The thing is though, I'm currently walking on top of the tunnel and I'm trying to figure out how to get down from this tunnel, because jumping is not in question, because I think it's about 3 meters or something, and I am not ready to jump that height. I found a way, a sketchy one I must admit, but a way to climb/slide down the mountain and successfully made it to the road. And so I made it back to the car and home alive with almost a whole roll of Fuji Velvia 100 shot. I really enjoyed the shoot. The hike wasn't entirely what I wanted it to be. It started out wonderfully but ended kind of only okay, but that's alright. I'm really happy that I was still able to hike this year at all, because by now those paths are covered in snow. When it comes to the photography, I'm overall pretty happy. I think I got some decent photos, some better, some worse. I'm afraid none of these are great though, nothing that I'd immediately categorize as a portfolio shot, but my photos often need some time to grow on me, so I might have a pretty different opinion in a couple months' time, we'll see. Also, I'm so happy to have finally shot that roll of Fuji Velvia 100. It was a great experience. However, I must say, I do not see myself shooting anymore with it. The results aren't bad, but they're not quite what I like. I think it just doesn't entirely align with my taste. Anyway, I really hope you enjoyed coming along on this shoot. Before saying goodbye, I would like to give a warm thank you to the lovely people supporting me on Patreon. Thank you to each one of you. If you're interested in Lightroom presets, tutorials, or postcards, you can check out my page via the link in the description. Also, I have a print shop in case that is of interest to you, also in the description. With that said, I hope to see you again soon. Until then, goodbye.